Welcome to Get Wisdom Live with Carl Mollison and Brian Kelly. What if God was also a co-host? What if the historically rare ability to question God directly and get profound answers back has been rediscovered? What would God say to today's sophisticated but deeply troubled world? Get Wisdom Live is here to share those answers with you. Here is Carl Mollison and Brian Kelly. Welcome to another episode of Get Wisdom Live. I'm Brian Kelly, along with Get Wisdom founder and director, Carl Mollison. This month, and Get Wisdom Live episode number 50, we're halfway to 100, Carl. The title of this episode is Creator Answers Difficult Questions About Consciousness. Now, what we're probing here, and we say difficult questions because we anticipate that, it's going to be a challenge even for Creator to answer the questions. We like to sometimes hold Creator's feet to the fire, and challenge Creator, So we're kind of doing that, Carl. We're kind of going on a little bit on a limb here.
Well, I'm not sure it's much of a challenge other than the tension always, which is more our problem than Creator's, that Creator cannot lead. In other words, Creator can't just take us by the nose and lead us where we need to go, fill us with all of the information that would be useful to know, tell us how to do everything, and then sit and kind of be a nanny and nudge us and push us and prod us and remind us and keep shouting at us till we do the right thing. It doesn't work that way. We're in charge, believe it or not, free will, free agency, and we have to figure things out. So that's what this quest is about, figuring out how things work and how to navigate. And to do that, we have to understand the foundation that we're a part of and it's been provided for us at the outset. And that learning curve is what we're addressing, and we're requesting help from the Almighty. But God can only tell us so much at a given moment. So we have to be smart enough to craft good questions. So we'll see as we go. Are we really digging deeper, or are we just spinning wheels or what have you? We never know for sure up front what will unfold and what will be granted in the way of additional wisdom. But we usually do fairly well, I think. We learn nuggets every time we head out with one of these explorations.
Well, we're gonna start off with a bold question that's ridiculously open-ended, right? And sometimes, like you said, Creator won't lead, so we have to sometimes preface a question with our own understanding to try to set the parameters. But here we're going to throw one out that has basically no parameters whatsoever. We're going to see what Creator says. This is from a Get Wisdom member, by the way, not you or me. We didn't come up with this question. We won't name the person who came up with this, but they might know who they are when they hear this. A Get Wisdom member asked this very direct question, Carl. Why does consciousness exist? What can Creator tell us?
All right, and these are Creator's words as I channeled them. Consciousness, as you know it, is a gift from us. You are experiencing our very own consciousness as a kind of remote outpost and extension of our total being, but only a small portion. Others like you are spread out throughout the earth, and many within the heavenly realm as a composite portion of our desire to expand and grow. That is the primary purpose of the creation you are witness to and a part of directly. Bits of consciousness spreading here and there to experience and to make things happen, for learning and growth, to be shared and added to the totality of the group effort underway, to come to grips with, understand, and utilize all the aspects of existence you encounter and can understand. The creation exists on multiple levels in multiple dimensions. As a human being in the physical plane, you are experiencing but one of these dimensions and one kind of existence, that of human. There are other sentient beings in your galaxy and on the Earth presently as interlopers. There are other forms of existence, as you have become aware, for all such beings moving from the physical to a higher vibrational state as spirits, and so forth. But that is the overarching purpose, an expansion of possibilities that can imply many outcomes. We do not prevent or close down anything in particular, but leave that to our extensions in the fray, so to speak, to work out local issues and problems, to find better ways of proceeding, and to make a course correction. This does not always happen, but that too presents new opportunities for growth and learning. It is often said that people learn more from their mistakes than from their successes, and to that we would agree that it is as good a defense of the current paradigm as any. You do not know what you have until it is compromised and lost as a consequence. Learning to see the signs when this is in danger of happening is a valuable life lesson, even though a painful one. But going through it will contribute immeasurably to the growth of knowledge, awareness, and a strengthening of the divine plan.
But we just never know what we're going to get with some of these questions. And I think this last couple sentences are just drop dead profound. Basically, if you ask the question, Creator, why does suffering exist? You could literally plug in that we would agree that the current paradigm, um, that people learn more from their mistakes than their successes, and that this is as good a defense of the current paradigm as any. So that right there is a profound answer to that question: why does suffering exist? Creator allows it because basically people learn from their mistakes more than their successes. I mean, that's just straight on, point on.
Well, and thinking back over history and the sorry state of affairs we've inherited from our forebears, it's clear that the advent of greater latitude, greater freedom, the free will and free agency, that's the gift from Creator of our existence in this kind of strange place, is what has been corrupted and compromised through mistakes and errors, getting out of alignment, the rise of evil.
Yep.
So that's inherent in the possibility of what can happen. Creator knew it going in, but trusted in us to find a way to surmount it and heal it. And there is the learning. And what greater learning could there be than how to prevent evil
Yeah,
and live
absolutely.
in divine alignment? That is the ultimate achievement. So
Absolutely.
this is worth striving to attain. And it also is the explanation for why things are so difficult. They've been allowed to go off the rails because it's what happened to us and those coming before us. And it was a series of mistakes, tragic errors, and wrongdoing that got out of control for a time. We got to find our way back, and there'll be rewards in it. But this is part of the paradigm, as painful as that is.
Yes, absolutely. U.S. Creator, another Get Wisdom member, expressed frustration with trying to grasp the workings of karma in our galaxy. In an effort to help, we will explore some properties of consciousness in this episode. We've been learning a great deal lately about soul attributes, the many properties that make us human but are expressed to varying degrees, making each soul unique. In addition to these characteristics, is there a basic aspect of consciousness that is present universally in all souls alike? What can Creator tell us?
All right, Creator says there is a basic energy that is a component of consciousness, bringing it about, maintaining its existence, and the wherewithal for the interconnectedness that is ever present in all of what we have called non-local consciousness, because it is present everywhere at once. This seems paradoxical and an impossibility to the physical based being experiencing a finite reality that is demarcated by the reach and grasp of the physical body and its senses, sight, hearing, touch, and so on. When the vastness of the universe you have come to know truly humbles that small sphere of awareness and influence. This is why your consciousness is a much more profound phenomenon. In a sense, it is somewhat like the internet, ever present and omnipresent. This is how you can connect to anyone, anywhere, instantly, and they to you. There needs to be an intention to define where you wish to go, what to look for, as well as being able to recognize it when you found it. It is all driven by intention. So, the basic supporting framework for this web of consciousness is an intrinsic energetic portion comprised of consciousness itself in a shared capacity available to all, much as the internet serves the global society for all who connect to it and begin making queries and searching for information and so on. The details of its workings are beyond human awareness and ability to grasp, and there are no words as yet in the human language to enumerate the mechanisms and components creating this truly magnificent and awesome functionality that is at once universal and personal, a seeming paradox. But it speaks to the exquisite refinement and powerful reach that are both a feature of what it is and how it operates.
Another amazing answer that you could probably read 10 times and still get new insights out of it. But I would boil it down to just one short little sentence the creator had in here. It is all driven by intention. Wow, what a profound little phrase there. It is all, the whole thing, right? The whole universe, as well as your life personally, is all driven by intention. Creation itself is driven by intention. I think it's a profound insight, Carl.
Yes, and that is the essence of consciousness. It's almost another word for consciousness.
Yeah.
It's a thought on the move. It's a existence of the capability of independent existence and awareness, and that is the intention, is that it's being mounted from moment to moment to exist.
Yeah.
You do it all day long through your thoughts and feelings and actions.
Yes, we are intending beings, right? Whatever you're doing, there's some element of intention. Even if you're not doing anything, that's an element of intention. So
Yeah.
there's a decision behind everything you're doing, and even the choosing not to decide is a decision.
Yeah.
So
But
you can't get
this aspect of the universality and the ability to tap into your non-local consciousness, which creator is talking about here, this kind of web of consciousness analogous to the internet.
Yeah.
We're talking about psychic ability is this kind of a common way of experiencing this. That's what people do when they're intuitive and they kind of have a knowing about something, or they get a flash of something from another life coming into their memory, and these sort of things. That's the web of consciousness they're tapping into, getting ideas and creative inspirations of others from the collective unconscious of humanity. That attribute of life and our culture has been looked at quite a lot by philosophers and psychologists, and it's real, it exists, and it's this web of consciousness that taps into it.
Collective unconscious. You've asked creator. We've speculated that the consciousness is energy, and energy is an expression of consciousness. We've also observed that energy flows, it moves. A rock looks like it is inert, but its atoms have moving parts that are quite active. Is consciousness, like energy, always, quote unquote, on the move, in need of movement, and when movement stops, does consciousness itself cease to exist?
All right, creator answers as follows. Your question is formulated from a bias of being aware of physical types of energy as described by the laws of physics: heat, electricity, magnetism, light, and so forth, all of which have a vibrational component. And you speak of atoms that are not truly particles, but energy in a certain configuration that is denser because of its vibrational characteristics, yet it is a discrete packet of energy existing in isolation and thus can be a part of something that is coherent and has a certain stability to be observable on a macro scale as the sum of many such component parts. And as such, that stability may contribute to an existence through eons of time, depending on the starting composition. There are many ancient worlds and star remnants from galaxies that have come into existence and faded away over time. Their energy still exists, but it is in differing forms that no longer function the same way, but are exhibiting a different set of potentials. This is the best way of understanding consciousness, that it is a pluripotential energy of infinite capabilities. There are many physical analogies we could give you to assist this understanding, all of which will fall short from the true intricacy and magnificent and awesome nature of consciousness in its totality. One such analogy would be pointing to white light being comprised of many wavelengths, each of a differing nature and each of a visibly differing color to the eye. Yet all are present within that white light, wherever it is existing and radiating as it emanates and beams outward. Consciousness, of course, has many, many more varieties of capability and expression because there are an infinite variety of things in existence comprised of consciousness to begin with. So everything you see and can imagine about is a representation of the potential of consciousness to bring things about, whether short or long lived, and representing a wildly varied array of other characteristics. There is an entire set of physical expressions within the physical plane of consciousness and its many creations, but that is a small subset of a total of infinite size. This is why there are no borders surrounding what is in existence, because that cannot be defined given the vastness of infinity. Another analogy we could give is that this web of consciousness that is non local, meaning everywhere at once, and omnipresent, meaning it exists everywhere at once. So I should keep quiet, let Creator talk. I apologize. Trying to help, but not needed. All right. Another analogy we could give is that this web of consciousness that is non local and omnipresent, meaning it exists everywhere at once, is sort of like a vast ocean that is supportive of varied content in varied configurations that can move about, come and go, expand, contract, transform into seemingly different manifestations of infinite variety, all the while being supported and interconnected by a kind of intrinsic foundation analogous to the internet. So, what you see on the internet, if you send a message to someone or visit a website to review its contents, is the basic information intended to portray what is intended by the creator of the website or by you in sending a query to an individual or organization. Those exchanges will happen seamlessly without a seeming connection to anything. In physical terms, they leave your keyboard in constructing a search query, and then information appears on your screen seamlessly without your having to know where the information goes and how an answer is returned. That is the supporting foundation of the internet, providing the platform. To have information content exchangeable in a meaningful fashion without having to mount an elaborate strategy and set of instructions on how to ensure a message reaches the intended party. You will be giving a label or instruction by stating an email address, for example, and it is that content that will enable the internet to process the query and bring about a response, because your query will have your identity or location embedded within. So there is a vast capability of interconnectedness that knows where everything exists, using a basic framework to define this. And that is analogous to the basic web-like nature of the field of non-local consciousness as a support for an interchange that is seamless and instantaneous and can be utilized by all forms of consciousness, particularly sentient beings who have business to conduct.
I really like this analogy that Creator has used for the internet because it helps us to understand. And I'll use that analogy to express that Creator talks about the end, that particularly sentient beings have business to conduct. We have business to conduct here. And if we want Creator to help us conduct that business, we need to send a message to him via the non-local internet, right? The non-local consciousness internet. But we have to have an identity. We have to have Creator's email address, right? We have to have his IP address in order to send the request. That's why you can't just pray to the universe, right? You have to
Yes.
identify the party that you want the message to be received by. So if you want Creator to intervene on your behalf, you need to address Creator and not the universe, Carl.
Yes, and this we've been taught about this. Creator follows the rules because to not do so, to answer someone who's not even thinking about God, just thinking about the universe, isn't really interacting directly. And so Creator hasn't been invited
Right.
to go and talk to that person or influence them, give them inspiration or some sense of something that it is they're yearning for. So Creator stays away.
Yeah.
So we have to be smart enough to use this capability of this web of consciousness wisely and well.
And it's interesting because while there's a need for an address, at the same time, Creator uses the analogy of internet, which means that distance isn't a problem, right? I mean,
Yes.
with the internet, you could be, across the room or you can be on the side of the world and you get the message basically at the same time, right? So, but at the same time, you have to direct your inquiry to the right party. So it's interesting. It's just a fascinating analogy. I'm so glad Creator talked about it that way. You ask Creator, are movement and flow intrinsic properties of all consciousness, contained within all consciousness, part of all consciousness, and not therefore expressly designed or a created feature?
All right. Here, Creator answers. What we would say is not that movement is an inherent requirement, but it is a likely potential to happen. We would describe existence as lively. In other words, being not only alive, but restless, wanting to go somewhere, create new imaginings, experience new things. This is why you cannot stop thinking. When your awareness is reduced to a bare minimum of your thoughts alone, your thoughts will keep coming, even if they only ponder a single notion. They will do so again and again because there is a kind of imperative and impatience to experience change, if only novelty, to escape that sameness, which can be boring and non-productive. This is a basic divine characteristic, and that is why it exists in our creations as a basic state of being and expression that will reveal itself in all that happens. Ours is an endless quest, and so yours must be as well. We see that as a good thing. The very makeup and the construction of how everything operates is predisposed to allow creating change, and quickly. As a light being, you find everything to be highly charged, but malleable and adaptable and modifiable. So your intentions can control it to keep things in bounds so they can be worked on, worked with, and worked out in a meaningful way that will create something new that adds value and adds to insight and knowledge and provides an effective new stimulus for change in some way or another. That flexibility is inherent in this fluid nature of things to make it seamless and effortless seeming. Within the physical plane you inhabit, if you wish to build a home, it might require months of planning and many detailed physical operations and steps to design, order, and take delivery of the component parts and then the labor of many individuals working in a sequence inherent to the intended finished product. To build from the ground up and install all the things needed for the working infrastructure, like plumbing, electrical circuits, heating and cooling ducts, and so on, within a foundation and framework that segregates the building into discrete rooms for differing intended functions and so on. In contrast, as a light being, you can construct a new dwelling with your thoughts instantly, and the various details and intricacy can be evolving on the fly as you focus on different layers and see things you would like to try out, and they will happen as you think of them. So rather than perhaps do a series of drawings or a tabletop model, you can experiment and revise the final product in bringing it into existence. And anytime thereafter, make modifications, additions, and so on as a function of your thoughts alone. So, this fluidity as a function of inherent motion as a basic characteristic has tremendous practical advantages. This is where the magic happens, when your intentions alone can substitute for a myriad of laborers in the creation of new things to enjoy and learn from. This is far from a solitary activity of light beings, because many projects are joint ventures, and this can be a learning opportunity and growth opportunity as well. The light beings learn by doing, by participating in creation of the new, not by reading books about it. It is much more fun and rewarding to learn, in effect, through play than tedious study done once removed from the real thing.
So Creator is talking about, you know, the capabilities of the light being and being instantaneous, being a sweeping, malleable, miraculous essentially. Because what's a miracle? Something we don't understand. But you know what? Tesla had some of this ability as a human being. He actually was purportedly able to design and visualize whatever he wanted to create in his mind and even test it and see things break and fix it in his mind before he ever created it in reality. And Tesla was unique in the sense that almost everything that he built and invented was perfect from day one, didn't require any changes, was flawless and functional. So I would say that in that sense, we think of Christ as a human being in light being mode. And I would say Tesla was a human being in semi-light being mode, right? He had some capabilities of a light being that more so than other humans have. We all have, we're all light being, we're all humans with in a semi-light being mode to one degree or another. And we differ to the sense of what degree that is. But I think that's just a fascinating exploration there.
Well, and it reflects the current state of affairs that we've chosen to incarnate in the physical plane as an animal, basically, in an animal body with a limited intellect and limited intuitive reach because of some damage done to us genetically. So we don't have this light being awareness, let alone the physical capability energetically to create on demand in the physical sense of things around us. We have limited effect on the environment. Some people can make things move, the telekinetic phenomena and so on. But it's meager compared to the light being. Well, my goodness, listen to this description. You
Yeah.
make a castle, you can do it and then redo it ad infinitum until you're happy, and change it all the way along in ways you would desire. And it doesn't cost you anything. You're just using universal energy. So this is a kind of idealized state of being compared to what we have.
I just want to share a quick story. When I read some Buddhist monks in Tibet, just walking through the Himalayas, and one of the monks came up, and then suddenly there was this magnificent castle, right there on the mountainside. And he turned to his master and said, "What is this?" And he goes, "It's your castle." "What do you mean it's my castle?" He goes, "Well, one of the things, one of the little wants that you've always wanted was you wanted your own castle. So here it is. And he went inside and he looked around and maybe spent 20 minutes to a half hour pretending that, looking at it. And then suddenly the master came up and said, what's going, what do you think? And he goes, well, I love it, but I don't need it now. We're done. And the second he said that it's done, the whole castle vanished. And the master said, you had your castle. So it's just, again, some human beings have more of this capability than others. And, I don't know if that's a true story, but I wouldn't be surprised the creator says it was. So.
Yeah. Well, and you alluded to the capability of some humans to have these sort of abilities in one way or another. I've
Yeah.
met two people in my life, both reporting the same thing as children and who didn't know one another. I've not seen this really described anywhere. I mean, it perhaps has, but what they talked about is as children, they could take a branch from a bush, for example, and hold it in their hand and bring forth flowers blooming on what was like a twig that
All
they were holding. It's the power of the mind, non-local consciousness, through intention to create a physical reality. And I've had this validated by Creator
Mm-hmm.
and in multiple channelings. This is simply the childlike innocence and state of allowing to tap into some of that light being capability as children. And then it faded over
Right.
the years. But
Sure, of
there,
course.
many children are highly psychic and then less so as adults and so on. So, these are glimpses of what Creator is pointing to as our future destiny.
Yes.
People say, I'm tired of being here. I want to be done with it. Well, we have somewhere better to go. And we need to ascend to the ability to move on. So we don't have to come back to this sorry mess over and over and over. Solve the problem and move on back up to the east side, so to speak, and
And
be
that
a light
problem is
being.
that problem is the problem of evil. That's what this is all
Yes.
about at the end of the day. So
Yes.
you ask creator, as creator is consciousness, can creator create anything that is not truly consciousness? In its ultimate sense, is everything consciousness at its core?
All right. And Creator answers, this is literally true, but far from being what might seem at first glance a disappointment. This is actually more awesome and more fabulous than anything you can imagine as a human being, with only your experience in the physical plane to go by. You are familiar with varied kinds of materials, their properties, appearances, ways they can be worked and shaped to create new objects and thus build things. But you will be much more constrained through the properties of physical existence energetically than as a light being. This is because there are no constraints on the imagination. In the workings of consciousness, in higher dimensions, your thoughts become reality and are directly observable and imbued with whatever characteristics you want things to have, because the possibilities are limitless. You can construct a gigantic edifice to enclose countless beings without worrying about engineering constraints like the tensile strength, load-bearing capabilities, weight limits, and so on. If you want a gossamer-like dome that is crystal clear, it can be of any size, and your intention will make it strong enough to stand on its own and be serviceable for whatever is needed. In the same way, what you think of as your mind, your awareness consciously, can visit more than one place at a time and travel instantly without a conveyance or any hazard. That kind of power and flexibility is impossible for beings in the physical. So, this is a paradox of your existence, that what you come to believe is real because it is tangible is more a hindrance than a help, because the properties of everything in the physical plane will be highly limited in how they can be brought into being how they will function, and how they can be utilized by human beings for a useful purpose. Yours is a fragile existence, dependent on a fragile body, and with a very limited reach with respect to influencing things around you. That physical limitation and weakness has a corresponding set of limitations when it comes to intellectual ability and the workings of your minds. Compared to light being existence, you are intellectually stunted as well. This is part of the inevitable consequences of inhabiting an animal body. After all, that is how you must experience everything, through the sensing mechanisms and operations of the physical body. So the consciousness of your soul projection, your soul being self, can only be perceived through your physical brain. And that leaves much to be desired in terms of efficiency in the scope of what can happen. Some of the deficiencies were intentional to keep the experiment well contained. As a relative weakling, it limits the amount of damage you could do in becoming corrupted, as so many before you have experienced. The key takeaway message here is that you are far more than you believe based on your human experiencing of your being. It is but a shadow self of the real you.
I think that has to be reiterated. Creator says again, some of the deficiencies were intentional to keep the experiment well contained. This question was about, is everything consciousness at its core? And Creator basically gave an emphatic yes. Everything is consciousness. There's nothing that's not consciousness. However, the physical plane that we're living in has had boundaries set up and intentional deficiencies to keep the experiment well contained. We're conducting an experiment in consciousness here. That's what the physical environment is all about. And it's all driven by intention. That's what Creator said earlier, all driven by intention. And what is prayer, Carl? It's intention. It's the shaping of intention to achieve a particular outcome. So all of this makes sense at the end of the day.
Well, we don't have the full range of the power of consciousness available to us while we're physical beings. So that's why this seems like maybe it's all kind of false. It's kind of phony. We're allowed to exist, but if we go back to just being thoughts, that seems dull and powerless,
Right.
because that's who we are as people. We have these thoughts in our head, but what can they really do? I mean, there's a limited influence on things and so on, but we have it upside down. That consciousness is much more powerful and more vast, but it has to be experienced in the right setting. And right now we're on a short leash, and we just don't have the reach we'll have as the light beings once again when we solve what has gone wrong here in the physical plane and contained, as you're pointing out and Creator is saying here.
Indeed. You ask Creator, are emotions an intrinsic property of all consciousness? Can a rock feel pain, joy, anger, etc.? If so, how?
All right, Creator answers, emotions are basic soul attributes, and being a very significant part of us as well, will be present everywhere in everything that has consciousness. In the physical plane, all are projections of our own being, and as such will mimic the larger aggregate of our makeup, at least to varying degrees. So while emotions exist in everything, you also must keep in mind that things will vary in their ability to experience emotions fully, and certainly may differ compared to what a human being experiences emotionally. After all, you are flesh and blood with a rich repertoire of physiologic responses to your feelings. That is importance for your very survival, being in a fragile state, and also needing to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Hence, your mobility and somewhat volatile nature wanting to make things happen, to be a part of things, engage with a soul imperative, to be a change agent in addition. Those soul attributes are important for your life mission as human beings to right the wrongs from the workings of evil and heal the perpetrators who perpetuate evil in your galaxy. That is work that cannot be done by inanimate objects that nonetheless consist of consciousness and have an awareness, but they are less vulnerable and they are less personal with a vested interest and a selfish need to serve themselves compared to the aggregate of similar substance. A rock will have come from a larger aggregate of similar material. It does have a sense of this. It has a sense of the passage of time. It has a sense of the environment much more keenly than you do because it uses its non local consciousness exclusively, lacking a physical brain like an animal has, humans included. Many indigenous peoples who attuned themselves to nature with their intuition came away recognizing the innate wisdom of Gaia in its various aspects, not only the wisdom of the trees in having a hierarchy and a communal agenda, but the wisdom of the mountains and the waterways, and could sense the depth of knowledge acquired through a vast life experience. This is quite understandable, given that the Earth is billions of years old, and much of what is present currently has been there from the beginning. There is a sharing of wisdom as well. That is part of the ecosystem, not just what waste products of one life form might serve as nutrition for another, or their very bodies to be consumed, but an interplay of consciousness, much akin to listening to a concert on a summer's eve, that all in Gaia will have an awareness of the sum total of existence and will be watching and learning from all that it witnesses. This is true growth and progression. And this is why your planet is special, because it is a living laboratory of consciousness that is ever expanding. Whereas there are many rocky planets devoid of water or a useful atmosphere for the support of life that remain barren and little changing. So the opportunities for expansion are meager. Your world is quite special in contrast, and there is much you can learn from Gaia still through the work of intuitives interested in exploring that library of knowledge that is accumulated.
I was stunned by this answer. Um, you know, I hadn't really put the idea of a rock having non-local consciousness, being psychic essentially, together, but it makes so much sense when you think about it. You can have a magician or a sorcerer can take a rock and put a spell on it, right, and then pass that rock onto somebody else, and that spell, that energy will travel with the rock. If the rock didn't have consciousness, it wouldn't be able to do that. It wouldn't be able to convey that. Essentially, it wouldn't be part of that transaction. So the rock is a consciousness, but it's observing, right? And I always wonder, if rock has consciousness, how can it handle, how can it stand the boredom, right? Being a rock must be the most boring thing in the universe. But no, not really, because it's watching everything, right? It's like the ultimate couch potato. It's tuned in to the universe and watching everything that goes on and experiencing it, maybe not directly in terms of its own intention, but being a recipient of experience. So it experiences the weather, it experiences the animals that come near it experiences the change, and experiences trauma. We've learned that when the interlopers destroyed humanity the first go around, it traumatized the earth itself. And the earth had to go through the whole dinosaur age in order to restore its energies, because the trauma was embedded in the very structure of the earth. The very rocks of the earth themselves were traumatized, apparently. So the idea that a rock can be traumatized, this is something I hadn't given a lot of thought to, Carl.
Well, and think about their witnessing of all the human suffering on the surface of the planet. It's
Yes.
happened all through the ages.
Yeah.
I remember in my early explorations of the paranormal, back before I really was doing formal channeling, I was in a class and our assignment was to tune into a rock anywhere, any place, some rock we owned or whatever, and get a sense of what it was up to, what's it thinking, what is it aware of. And I did so, and I had actually, it was a crystal, and I used it, kind of energetically to kind of be supportive, and I didn't know much about what I was doing, but when I was done with the session, I would put it in a pouch and stick it in my closet, and then I got to thinking, "I'm keeping this rock in the dark all day long, 7 days a week, other than, maybe, an hour every week when I would do some kind of exercise, with it intuitively." So I tuned into the rock, and I asked the rock, "Is it unhappy because it's sitting in the dark so much?" And the rock told me, "It's not just sitting, it's tuned into things, it's aware of things." And it described to me this meteor shower that was taking place, and it was experiencing and witnessing and picking up information from those meteor elements that were coming into the Earth, kind of, arena as visitors. And I mean, I was shocked,
Yeah.
but here we are. See, that's a kind of a validation, of a forethought, so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all consciousness. Everything's conscious. There's nothing that's not consciousness. Yeah. So, and that's good news, Creator says, not bad news. You ask Creator, we know that death of the body occurs when life force energy is withdrawn. Yet the consciousness projecting from our soul persists. It may hover about the body, stay trapped in limbo, or ascend to the heavenly realm. Is life force energy a more basic form of consciousness that is more universal than individually configured, or is it something else?
All right, the Creator says, the physical body is both more universal, yet individually configured for discrete persons. After all, there are ancestral influences and the imprint of the family lineage on many aspects of the biologic makeup, as well as to some extent the basic mix of soul attributes pre-selected in the light prior to coming into a new incarnation. The phenomena of genetic inheritance of things like stature, aspects of appearance, interests, talents, and other characteristics may well be intentionally prearranged to be present. Only a small amount coming through the actual DNA, but most coming courtesy of the soul. These aspects we speak of are an overlay on a kind of genetic platform that does have a commonality from person to person as a kind of basal state before the customization. It is somewhat akin to the manufacture of an automobile. It is available in many models and styles. There's a basic chassis, but then the body might differ from one model to another on the same basic framework and will look quite different, have a different feel, and attract different kinds of buyers. And from there, many variations on the size of the engine and its power, the gear shift arrangement, the presence of extra safety features, or higher and refined characteristics, like a good sound system, a fancy radio, and the decorative items, the trim and color scheme, and the interior furnishings to reflect something utilitarian or a more luxurious vehicle. But even with the quite varied appearance, the basic chassis might be identical and truly generic as a common foundation. This is true of the human body as well. There is a basic starting point that is used in common, both for the DNA-based genetics as well as the interdimensional DNA-based soul attribute customization. Most soul attributes of great importance are present universally, but it is the mix, the balance in emphasizing one or another within that mixture that ends up creating quite varied personalities and other capabilities like useful talents, personal interests, and compatibility with intended life partners or family members, and the life mission for that individual to work on. People require different strengths for different occupations and careers. Some people are highly intellectual and need that kind of work setting. Others are more doers, wanting to be active, interacting dynamically and in motion. Others are rewarded by more routine functions that are nonetheless useful and will not mind punching a clock and doing repetitive tasks because they have other interests as well, outside of needing to make a living. So their strengths might be devoted to a hobby they are passionate about, or volunteer work and helping others, and so on. As we will be discussing, there are two basic sources of energy in the divine plan for human beings. One is the physical body in a generic sense, and the other is the important imprinting of the soul, which defines you as an individual and is truly the point of the excursion, intending to be a force for good and a change agent as the broader goal for humanity. Everything else that happens fits within that broad framework and charter.
There's a lot of things I thought about when reading this and hearing you talk about it again. Um, I'm fascinated by the fact that Creator is so adept at using everything that's part of our modern life as an example of to help us understand things, and that's part of the whole idea of a divine update, right? That if we limit you know our scriptures to something that's 2,000 years old, the divine is not able to express some important lessons in terms that we're familiar with and understand. Instead, we're stuck on this paradigm 2,000 years ago. And I'm thinking, how would Creator, convey these ideas 2,000 years ago? Maybe Creator would say, well, you would take wool off a sheep, and then you make thread out of that, and then the thread could be made into a shawl or a dress or other things, and then it could be dyed with different colors or different patterns. And so it's all wool at the end of the day, but it can be expressed in infinite ways. So maybe Creator would use that example, but then you're stuck to a much more limited set of examples you could do from 2,000 years ago than today. Today is much more complex society. We're much more complex in our lives, and so Creator wants to be able to use that to express that. And so I think that's a fascinating look at that from that aspect.
Well, we have a lot to learn, but we're learning the basics here, and that is going to be a springboard. We only need to understand so much to get the sense of what needs to happen, what we need to do. So we're doing this all the time and filling in the gaps, and it's reinforcing our confidence in the message that's coming together as a mosaic, that we
And
have the wherewithal to control our destiny, but we've got to get to it. We've got to stick to it.
yes, absolutely. You ask Creator, when sentient entities are granted free will, evil appears to be an unavoidable potential. As such, being unavoidable, it appears to be intrinsic to sentient consciousness, sentient being self aware. Is evil a design element of sentient consciousness? What can Creator tell us?
All right, Creator says, there is an unfortunate limitation in your question, in that evil is an exceptionally broad category and is described in a kind of black or white labeling where evil does not belong, as though it is somehow a grievous error that needs not only correction, but to be prevented at all costs as perhaps a high goal for humanity. We see evil quite differently. It is not an either or choice, existing or not existing. Evil, like beauty, is in the mind and eye of the beholder, much more than people usually recognize. Yet society recognizes not all evil is equivalent. This is why there is a body of law dealing with misdemeanors as well as felony crimes of a more serious nature, and in some parts of the world, capital offenses meriting a death warrant. The existence of evil is most unfortunate, and we see it as more a kind of folly than an inescapable poison, needing to be stamped out entirely to the last vestige of its existence. We see more clearly that evil is a question of degree in the implementation of a mix of soul attributes, usually conferring some extra privilege or power someone can enjoy for a time or benefit from, not available to the average person. And that is the allure: to cut corners, to exploit the system, to look for an advantage to gain for the self, perhaps at the expense of others, even if just a convenience to make life easier by taking something away that does not belong to the person. In every case, no matter what the evil act might be, if you were to break it down into its component parts, motivations, and potential consequences, and in particular, if more than one soul attribute is considered as being in the mix, which is undoubtedly the case, as human beings have a complex makeup always, it is possible to discern the source and nature of the various motivations and kinds of energy being deployed. And with a growing understanding of the intended purpose for exercising those attributes, perhaps well intentioned initially, but just reaching at an unhealthy level of intensity or duration, so they cross a line, they intrude on someone else's area of influence or responsibility, and thus compete unfairly by not belonging in the first place. There are many ways people work the system to take advantage of others: through cheating, currying special favor, sabotaging others by starting rumors or making false accusations about others to an overseer or supervisor, the proverbial stabbing in the back of office politics, and then on to more grievous offenses and actual crimes: physical assault, sexual abuse, property crimes, and homicide. If you start with a tragedy that has come about and trace back its history, if you had our ability to see the energetics of all intentions and their historical context, you would see, as we do, it is like the weaving of the strands of a rope, a series of many small things joining together to become a more urgent agenda and perhaps an imperative at some point. So to not act on it becomes impossible. Something so heinous as a killing might have begun over a long span of time, even multiple lives of feeling powerless, inadequate, and left behind. So, a compensatory attempt to garner more personal power and influence may become increasingly a focus and agenda for the victim, if only as a reaction to their own weakness, and often becomes transformed along the way from an attempt to regain one's equilibrium and a better life balance, to reach a tipping point where something is taken to an excess and gets out of hand. Power, for example, becomes a corrupting influence when indulged too greatly. It can even become addicting, especially if not countered by other soul attributes that would have a moderating influence to create competing interests that have a softer focus and provide a healthy outlet for regained power. So it is applied to humanitarian agendas or building a friendship or love relationship through the sharing of that power with others in a healthy way that earns respect and a desire to have the individual within the fold, so to speak, as a colleague, friend, or lover. So, what could go wrong with unbridled exhibition? And its attainment may well be healthy when used more judiciously and sensibly applied. So, we are taking pains to point out there is too much black or white thinking, especially in the implementation of your legal system, that seeks to label people as a criminal, a wrongdoer, and that label will be construed as their being defective. This is a prescription for ostracism and exclusion from reentry into society once they are incarcerated. So it creates a lot of dead end lives. The unfortunate reality is this is encouraged by the interlopers to happen. And this is why things never seem to come about in wanting rehabilitation of wrongdoers. But a major part of the reason why this is so difficult is that evil is not a unique attribute or characteristic that could be excised somehow as by amputation to cure the problem. The various components of evil in thoughts, feelings, and actions are made up of many essential attributes that are inherent in the being and cannot be extirpated, nor would this be desirable, except perhaps to a degree. The cure for criminality is divine intervention to bring love to the perpetrators in a way that can unravel those connecting strands of inner need and painful times, leaving a wounding. Until that is repaired, the person will be at risk of overcompensating and doing things inimical to their own interests and destructive to make up for the damage done to them.
Wow, there's just so many things in this channel. We could talk about it for hours, probably, ultimately. But the thing that I would like to point out about the problem of evil is that it seems in this answer that Creator is really saying the solution is learning the art of living, to a profound sense, gaining wisdom, knowing where to strike a balance, knowing how to, meet your desires in a way that's balanced and takes into account all of the stakeholders that are involved, right? And but it makes it more complicated because there's not just one art for living. Everybody, because they're a unique collection of attributes, has to forge, has to create, has to discover, has to implement their own um, solution, their own strategy. But it has to be universal in the sense that it doesn't cause harm. So the art of living is something that has to be customized for every single human being, not just human, but probably every being out in the universe has that same need.
Yes. Well, the artful part will be in helping one another return to better divine alignment. So these individual inclinations and proclivities will be exercised in a safe way so we can at least get along and not hurt each other.
Yeah, yeah,
We need healing.
that would be an amazing accomplishment for sure. U.S. Creator, we know karma and the problems karma was designed to deal with are issues that require healing intervention. Can Creator share with us how empowered prayer, the Lightworker Healing Protocol, deep subconscious mind reset, and divine life support are the means by which we can best resolve these issues?
All right. And this is what Creator tells us. The secret to your success in the face of great danger and overwhelming challenges will prove to be your partnership with the divine, formulated through the work of your channel in providing Get Wisdom as an interface to share divine wisdom about the great drama underway. Your charter is to save and heal humanity. That has yet to happen in a convincing way at any point throughout human history. And this is why you are still being subjugated and enslaved as a civilization, being controlled from behind the scenes by a cabal of extraterrestrials working with dark spirits they have commandeered as an additional weapon to torment you and limit your effectiveness. Because of your divinity and the periodic gains of the religious individuals among you providing a pushback, the extraterrestrials have come to be intrigued, if not to enjoy entirely, your resilience and unpredictable ability to sometimes dodge their blows and to recover better than expected, even from attempts to exterminate you. Not being a believer in the Almighty, they never attribute that to divine intervention. But that is the key you hold that can make you the winners in this contest. But you have always needed the right tools, and they have not been fully available until now. You have been taught to pray, but not truly how to do so with great effectiveness. You have been taught about evil and the importance of avoiding its influence, but you have not been fully informed where evil really comes from and what specific steps you could take that fit these extremely unusual circumstances in having to deal with adversaries that are not even human and indeed have insidious and in some cases quite advanced technological superiority. The Lightworker Healing Protocol and the Deep Subconscious Mind Reset, along with empowered prayer, give you the tools necessary to overcome the evil forces arrayed against you, working systematically to undermine, weaken, and ultimately destroy everything in your civilization. We can tell you that the tools are up to the job if they are used. That is the part we cannot control. We cannot do it for you. The test of you is for you to take up the challenge, to both awaken others to what is truly going on and the only answer that will help, and to engage with the protocols and put them to use diligently with a high level of dedication. That is the way forward that will lead you to victory. Through partnership with the divine, you will have the missing strength needed because we can answer your requests. We can implement healing on your behalf at a high level and with intensity, and follow the detailed instructions of the protocols to further empower the healing through many kinds of leveraging. It will make up for lost time and provide an aggregate force great enough to do what is needed in standing up to the interlopers. We can help to arrange a temporary withdrawal that provides a window of opportunity to compete with healing of humanity, to complete the healing of humanity, unencumbered by the relentless manipulations and onslaught of negativity employed daily by the extraterrestrial alliance. That healing effort can save you, and if that happens, it will be a certainty that it will be enough to save all the other civilizations in the galaxy in danger of extinction because of their downward slide from the depravity of the extraterrestrials in charge of things. Evil can be healed and turned into love eventually. That is the greatest of challenges there is, but the most worthy of goals given the size of the problem. You can do this because you are divine and a part of us. We created you as a reconfiguration of our consciousness so you would have the wherewithal to tackle this biggest of problems and win. Along the way, you too have become corrupted and weakened. That too is curable and the first order of business that will be attended to through your healing efforts with the protocols. You will be saving yourselves as first in line, and that is as it should be, because without you, all will fail. Always remember, we are here for you and will be your partner throughout the journey if you call on us and apply yourselves.
Wow, that we could go over this for hours, but we've run out of time, Carl. But I will say this: the one sentence, "Evil can be healed and turned into love eventually." Wow, that's a plaque for the wall right there. But that's it, Carl. It's in a nutshell. We can heal this.
All right, get the healing going.
All right. Well, that's all for this week's Get Wisdom, or this month's Get Wisdom, I should say. Get Wisdom Live. We'll be back next month with another episode. Thanks, everyone.
Be well.